Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have an inspiring show coming right up. So what would you do if you were on a plane and it crash landed in a river? Our first guest, Dave Sanderson, had that happen to him. He was on U.S. Airways Flight 1549, otherwise known as the Miracle on the Hudson, and it was ditched into the Hudson River on January 15th, 2009. So, Dave is known as an inspirational survivor, speaker, and author of the book, Moments Matter, How One Defining Moment Can Create a Lifetime of Purpose. So let's welcome to the show, Dave.
Marianne, thank you for having me today.
It's such an honor to have you here, Dave. Gosh, I'm sure you're a hero to so many people, and you've done such great work. Has it always been your calling to be an inspirational speaker?
Well, thank you. I don't think this ever was, I thought, my calling, but I found out after the plane crash in the river, in the Hudson River on January 15, 2009, it sort of became my calling in the direction that my life was supposed to go. So that's when I realized that, everything in my life sort of led up to that moment and everything that happened. So that's why we called my book Moments Matter, because all these moments in our life that add up do really matter.
And I think that's so appropriate. If you could take a moment and just explain to our listeners what your life was before that whole plane crash.
So thank you. For about 30-plus years, I was either in sales or in sales management, primarily in technology. So I traveled 3 to 4 days, pretty much 3 weeks a month. So I was always on the road in marketing and selling and doing what salespeople do and sales managers do. But so I was not home a lot, sort of like modeling my dad. My dad did a similar thing, but he wasn't home a lot either. So I really appreciate my wife stepping up and really being the leader of our family. Why she gave me the latitude to do what I need to do to be able to provide for the family. So that's what I did for 30 plus years, getting before that day happened.
Well, and then I know when the plane crash happened, and there was the movie that came out not all that long ago, Sully, that talked about the Miracle on the Hudson. And for those of us who are kind of new to the story, I mean, when I watched it, I was thinking, my gosh, what an intense time. I mean, who knows how people would react during a situation like that?
Yeah, that's one thing that really is amazing, because people come up to me all the time, Marianne, and say, I don't know how I would react if I knew that in 60 seconds from now the plane's going to crash and I may or may not be here. And I tell people it's amazing, because I think your values and your belief systems that you have grown up with and learned and obtained, they'll come into play. Everything will come to the surface in that moment, that critical moment, which I call a personal plane crash. That's the term that I sort of phrase, that when something happens in your life that you're not expecting, and all of a sudden you're faced with having to handle something, and how are you going to handle it, and what's going to happen during and after. So I think that that day, I think the saving graces of that day, Caitlin, Marianne, was the passenger makeup of that plane, and Captain Sullenberger shared that strategy and that thought processes with us after the plane crash. And I never thought of it that closely, but now if you look at yourself when you fly or you're on a train, so looking around at the kind of people on the plane or train with you, you sort of can understand maybe how things may shake out if something does happen.
Well, I understand that your grandmother had a little bit of influence as well during that time, because the plane crashes, it's very intense, and then you hear her talking to you.
Yeah, my mother actually, and my mother, like I mentioned, was probably the strongest person in our family, and she instilled, I think, some great values in all my sister and my brother and myself. But my game plan initially, once I figured out that I was alive and we got down and water was coming in the plane so rapidly and we knew we had to get out, my game plan was just get to the aisle and get up and get out. But then I heard my mother, when I got to the aisle to make my way out, start talking to me, and something that she had told me when I was a child that I hadn't even thought about for years was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And the one thing I tell people that was great about my mother is she never really would tell us what to do. She'd give us choices, and hopefully we make the correct choice based on our value set. So, that's what I heard. And so my values were you take care of other people first. I grew up in that environment where I was always a part of a team, whether it's Boy Scouts or athletics, and that's why I went towards the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help. And once there was one elderly lady who needed a little bit of help, and once we sort of got her going a little bit, I started making my way out of the plane. And at that time, it was waist deep in the water, and luggage was flown out, and it's dark in the back of the plane, and I'm just sort of feeling my way out, and all the further I could get up was 10F. And when I got there, I looked out, and there was no room on the wing and no room on the boat. Everybody's probably seen the picture of people standing on a wing. Well, I never got to the wing because it was already filled up, so that's why I was in the plane waist deep in 36-degree water, holding on to the lifeboat for about 7 minutes.
Well, and I heard during some of the interviews that you've done, you were holding on to the lifeboat because the current was actually moving the plane downstream.
Correct. That plane actually floated down the river. They estimate about a half a mile in 24 minutes. So the lifeboat that comes out of the right side was floating out into the river. And like I tell people, they and I, who reads the instructions, when they tell you to read the instructions, no one does. It's actually tethered to the plane. So they didn't know that, so they kept yelling at me to hold on. And since I was inside the plane and I had some leverage, I could at least hold on to the lifeboat. I held on to it close to the wing so people could start getting off and off the lifeboat onto the wing to make their way out of the situation.
Well, and we're going to switch topics in a little bit and talk a little bit more about the book and your coaching that you do. But before that, I really do want to applaud you. I mean, there's more than one hero that was on that plane that day, and you're definitely one. I understand that you were the last passenger to get off the plane, and you were there until you could kind of feel a shift in the airplane itself and kind of was thinking that it was going to start to sink.
That's correct. I was holding on to the lifeboat and, just how things were progressing, but one of the tugboats that were there for the rescue backed out and hit the front of the plane and shook the plane, and tugboats are big, heavy boats, and it shook the plane, and water started sloshing up towards my back, and all of a sudden, man, I thought, the first thing I thought, Marianne, was Titanic. I thought, don't be stuck down in a plane. I mean, the only thing I could reference was seeing in Titanic that boat tip up, it sucked everybody down with it. And that's exactly what
I would think the same thing.
You're this close to getting out of here, man. And it's like, don't be stuck down in a plane. And that's why I jumped out and started swimming to the closest boat that I could find. It happened to be the end of that wing. And if you've seen the movie Sully, the ferry that I went to was like the one in the movie where they had a plastic ladder they rolled down from the side. So when I got there, now they yelled to climb up, climb. And I yelled up, can't. And then my mom started talking to me again because the word my mother hated most of life was the word can't. So I got one arm up and the other arm up, and someone pulled me on the ferry. That's how I got off the plane.
It is a miracle, just that your whole story and to survive a plane crash like that is just absolutely amazing. Now, I do want to switch gears. I know that you have a new book out called Moments Matter. Why don't you share a little bit about that for us?
Well, thank you. And I was a contributing author to a book called Brace for Impact, which basically I wrote a chapter about my story, but I was getting pulled so many different directions that people were asking me, and they liked what I was talking about and some of the lessons and strategies that I was coaching and teaching on. I said, well, maybe there is something here. So I got together with my team, and we were sort of talking about this. And my former assistant, Vicki, is the one who really put this in my mind, Marianne, as we were talking, and she said, you need to record this for your grandkids. She said, they need to hear it from your voice. And I told her a story about two elderly ladies that lived down the street from me, and they were both older, and I went down and, you help your neighbors out. I helped them with their TV, and they were giving me cookies and milk, and I saw on their table they had these pictures, these books, and they were pictures of concentration camps. And I was asking them what happened, and they're like, we lived there. We survived this, Auschwitz. And I told them they need to record this for posterity, and they never did. So I said, Vicki, you're right, I need to record it. So we recorded about 9 hours, Marianne, of just recording the entire, what happened that day, minute by minute. And we figured out we had the book. We have a book, and it's like we have all these things, and how do we put it together? And I figured there's really 12 different things, lessons, then strategies that I used that day that you can translate to handle yourself during a crisis, but also in business and in life. But as you know, you do books, you got ideas, you're putting things together. It's like, how do I do this thing? And all of a sudden, Cindy, who helped me write the book, says, what do you want to call it? And I'm like, I have no clue. And all of a sudden I said, you know what? One thing I've realized in my life after doing this process is that all those moments in my life that I never thought even meant anything added up that day, and they really mattered in my life. And now all of a sudden we're like, that's the title. Moments matter, because all these moments that we think that don't add any value 30, 40, 50 years ago, one day you may have to use that one thing you learned to help somebody or save yourself. And that's how this whole book came together. And I was really just excited and honored to be able to do this.
Well, and from what I understand, your whole perspective changed as well. I mean, you're a highly successful salesperson, and your shift moved from that towards your family.
It did. And, I wrote a blog about this, and in my TED Talk, I talk about my worldview really started to change, where, two things really changed for me, Marianne. First was I was thinking, I don't want to be like my dad, where my dad was never there for me, so I never had a connection with my dad. And, we were always provided for, right? We never suffered, but I didn't have a connection. So number one was I've got to change the way I process and prioritize my time. But the second thing I started realizing, and this is what I talk about in my TED Talk called Bouncing Back, is I was pretty judgmental. I would judge people pretty quickly once I looked at them. And as this happened and I saw things, I started realizing there's no basis for me to judge people, because I don't understand people's backstories of their lives. They may have a whole different perspective, like we opened up this call with, this talk, was, there's a lot of people on there, you just don't know where they came from. You don't know what you would do in a situation like this. So I was like, all of a sudden I started thinking, maybe I am too judgmental. And once I started making that shift in my life, to prioritizing my time towards my family and stop judging people so quickly and harshly, all of a sudden everything started opening up for me. And I think that was one of the biggest changes in my life, and this the result of what happened on the plane that day.
Now, is that also something that, because I know you're a highly sought-after keynote speaker, and you do talk on the same topic as your TED Talks and also Brace for Impact. Is this also something that you kind of dive into in regards to the whole, not being so judgmental and just kind of allowing things to be?
Yeah, thank you for opening up that, because as I was developing my TED Talk, this started sort of coming to me and how I could really present it and get it out into the content out to the public. So as part of primarily when I do my Bouncing Back, my TED Talk around post-traumatic growth syndrome, on how you can grow from a traumatic life event, this is one of the things I talk about is changing your worldview and looking at a worldview from the perspective of don't be as judgmental, because candidly it's probably holding you back in a lot of different areas. So it's definitely something that I know we talk about, but now in some of the people that I talk to and coach and mentor in some of the workshops, people ask me to delve into this deeper. So I really go into some of the strategies on how not to be judgmental and how to grow from a traumatic life event.
Well, and what are some of the other things that you are seeing corporations bring you in to either do like breakout sessions or have you come in and speak?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. A lot of things I get called on. Number one is about what I call mission-focused leadership, how to get your teams aligned with the mission and execute on that mission. Another thing that a lot of people bring me in for, because I did a program for Disneyland years ago when they were having some challenges, and it's called situational awareness, but I really delved into and taught people how to be about sensory acuity. And what's that mean? Well, it's how the modalities that people reside in primarily and how they communicate, and how you can be more effective in communication by understanding the modality you reside in and the other person resides in. And I'll give you an example of that, Marianne. My wife and I've been married now 30-plus years. But, sometimes about the halfway point, sometimes things get a little dicey. Things may not be going as smooth as you like. And I realized, one of the reasons that's probably happening was my wife is a very high auditory person. She would love to talk. She'll talk for 30 minutes without taking a breath. And I'm a visual person where, you give me something about 30, 45 seconds, I got it. I don't need a full explanation on how to do it. So if you can understand a visual person in relation to talking to an auditory person, the auditory person gets very frustrated because they must want to get it out. The visual person gets frustrated because I don't need to hear it. You're butting heads. And all of a sudden, I started realizing the strategy on how to change that and teach people how to communicate in different modalities. That changed not only my relationship, but also changed my performance in business and everything else. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the C-suites of companies communicating with chief executive officers, CFOs, and CIOs, where other people can't get there because I understand how to communicate more effectively. So the second thing they bring me in for is that, and third is how to manage your mind or how to manage your state, and to be able to get an outcome. And those are the three primary areas that people bring me in for to either mentor, coach, or speak on in workshops for their organizations.
I think there can never be enough discussion around the topic of communication because it's always in how people perceive things. And you have a very unique approach in teaching people how to look at it from an out-of-the-box kind of component.
Right. I try to put people in the other person's shoes and help them understand how they're communicating. And there's, of course, keywords you can listen for and dynamics. But, it's amazing. And I tell people, try this in your relationship. And just try to put good in that person's modality. And all of a sudden, you're now walking sideways instead of across from each other. You're symbiotic. And all of a sudden, your relationship changes. And that's the first thing I tell people to do. And when I go to your relationship first, understand, put in that person's modality, and all of a sudden see what the change is. And it's amazing what people tell me.
Yeah. And what I find fascinating, too, is you've really taken up the flag for Red Cross and done a lot to help raise funds for them. You've raised an extraordinary amount of money for them. And so when corporations are looking for a speaker to come in and talk to their either sales staff or just, their employees, they're looking for somebody that just doesn't have that compelling story, but also has that tremendous background where they can raise funds or make sales. And you really have, you have the entire package as far as that's concerned.
Well, thank you. One thing I realized after this, Marianne, and actually about 10 days after the plane crash, I could impact people's lives. And that's why I do what I do for the Red Cross. But, when I go into sales organization or anything else, is I try to help people understand, it's not about yourself. And I just wrote a blog about this, recently about, I was very, very focused on being achievement. And once I realized that and made the shift, all of a sudden, it wasn't about me. So I give people understand that, that day on the plane, if everybody was out for themselves that day on the plane, this would have been a crisis, a tragedy. But everybody checked their egos at the door and focused on the bigger mission. And that's what I talk about, mission-focused leadership, how to bring the mission, focus on the mission, and bring everybody along with you. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, and I think your story also provides insight and hope for other people who are looking to develop their own gifts and become their own leader in their life or their own hero. And I know that's one of the things that you talk about in your Create Your Own Flight Plan workshop that you do, that, it kind of helps people to kind of look at that.
Right. Look at yourself, because everybody's got a story. And you know this. You're an author. You probably know this is better than I do. Everybody's got that story. If they ask themselves wrong questions, or internal dialogue is not really focused on the bigger picture. So once you open up your mind and ask yourself better levels of questions, you get better content out, and all of a sudden people start understanding, why am I here? And that, when I started understanding why am I here, all of a sudden, I started realizing how I could impact people at a higher level and focus on serving and contribution and gratitude instead of achievement on all of my personal self-significance.
Looking back on everything, it's quite an experience. It would change anybody. Can you just look at it and go, gosh, could never imagine that I'd end up where I am today with all the changes I had to make. And, you had to have had a lot of faith in making that kind of move in your career that you did as well. I mean, there's definitely God was working on your behalf through all of this.
Well, most definitely. And my former minister sort of likened it when he heard me speak. He says, like, you went into water one person, you came out another. It's like, we don't believe in rebaptism, but it's like you almost came out a whole different person, because that's exactly what happened to me. I started realizing the bigger picture, and all of a sudden the focusing, the way I started focusing things, it started serving at a bigger level. But my wife still didn't buy into it, Marianne. We were pretty successful, right? We had a lot of certainty. My wife thrives on certainty. Where I got to a point after this is I was thriving on how can I make an impact. I have enough certainty in my life, and that didn't jive either. So once she understood that I had to visually see that I was making an impact, she's the one who pushed me over the edge to go ahead and do it. And it's been, as you start a business or anything, it's not pixie dust and sunshine. But you got to have faith. Got to have faith in yourself, right? And like Tony Robbins taught me when I was with him for 10 years as security director, it's like, when you do this, you got to burn the boats. You got to burn the boats and just go for it, because if you have a way to get out, you'll get out. So, he taught me a lot of lessons, so that's why I burned the boats, and, we're all in, and there's no going back now. We're here for a whole different mission. So, and my wife's now in it with me. At first she wasn't.
Well, yeah, and many of us are so grateful that you are, because not only do you have your story, but the way that you share it and express it and, bring this inspiration to companies, kind of leverage just their human potential that they have is, I just think, phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I think, people come up to me and ask me, how do you do this from scratch? How did you do this? You had no background in any of this. But, I've always believed in personal development and investing in yourself. And one of the people I followed early in my career was Zig Ziglar. And I went back and looked at how did Zig Ziglar start. And if you know the Zig Ziglar story, is the first 100 talks and he never took a dime. He just looked at it, perfecting his techniques. And that's, I tell people, you have to earn the rights to be able to do this. I mean, you just can't step on stage and be 10,000 people and be Tony Robbins. It's just not, but if you invest the time and do the right things and surround yourself with the right people and have the right mindset, eventually you'll start making progress towards that. And that's what I tell people. It's just, it's not a saw to Paul. It's, you gotta invest the time. And so many people now don't want to invest the time. They want the fast track. And, as we know, you're probably old enough to understand like I am, the fast track rarely gets you there.
Yeah, there's no fast track.
There's
no fast track to success. There's no way.
yeah, unless you get somebody drop a dime on you really quick, it's not going to happen.
Well, and what's interesting is success really develops over years. I mean, you've had this experience, and other people, it takes them an entire lifetime, if they even get it at all, but really what success means. And it, kind of diving into those moments where, you're spending time with your family as opposed to working more hours. I mean, what's more important? As we look at everything, we kind of, reflect back.
And you got to be more effective with your time, and it goes back to sort of that success cycle that everybody may have heard or know, but where you want something, but it's all about taking action, right? And then getting results, and then all of a sudden you get more certainty, so then you take more action. So it's just a cycle, but you got to start out. You got to take the action, right? And a lot of people are afraid to take the action. So I'll leave you with this. Some of the people on the plane kept coming up to me and saying, "Well, how are you doing this? Why don't you just go back to your job? We just be grateful for what we've got for life." And I'm like, we all have our own pathways. We all were given a choice. We all had the same situation. I took action, and some people didn't. And Captain Sullenberger took action. Look where he's at. Captain Scow took action. Look where he's at. It's about taking action, right, and stepping up and getting results. And that's what I tell people. It's not rocket science, as we know, but it's consistency and focusing on persistence and being able to get the outcome.
Well, you're definitely good at what you do, and I can see why these major corporations hire you to come in and speak to their folks, and why groups and organizations all across the U.S. have you to just present your story, but also your inspiration, because the story was, the crash on the Hudson was like the beginning of your story in some ways,
Yep, it was. It basically was a jolt, and that's why I use the word jolt in my TED Talk. A jolt to me to sort of open my story up, and all of a sudden gave me that impetus to take the pathway that I think God wanted me to be on, and that's why if I can inspire one person a day, that's my goal, and I've accomplished my outcome for the day. So I appreciate your allowing me to share this with your audience and how I can help serve them at a greater level.
Oh, without a doubt. And so, Dave, where do you go from here? I mean, you've got so many great things you're doing. What's next on the docket for you?
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm really rolling out my TED Talk now into a bigger talk so people can understand this post-traumatic growth syndrome, what it's all about. But we're going to be doing another book, and it's going to be about this, about growing from a traumatic life experience. I think people are dying to have knowledge on how not to go to PTSD and go to a different direction. But we've developed a video product too, and what basically, Marianne, all I've done is like other people. I haven't done anything new. I've taken Moments Matter and produced a video series based on the book, because one of the things I talked about, is sensory acuity, and for people who are more auditory or visual, and then they'll have, they don't have to read my book. They can watch the video series and or hear the series I'm going to be producing on the auditory. So I can be very congruent with my messaging, and that's part of everything I'm doing is trying to be congruent with my messaging.
Oh, perfect. And for our listeners that want to connect with you and be part of your community, where can they go?
Well, I appreciate it. They can go to my website at davesandersonspeaks.com. I can interact with me personally there, but Facebook is where I put a lot of my updates and what's going on. That's Dave Sanderson Speaks. LinkedIn is where I give my business thoughts and strategies on David Sanderson. But Twitter is where I've been going a lot, because people want to hear those quick ones. But I tell you what, Marianne, like we talked about Instagram, all of a sudden I can show people what's going on Instagram. So I'm on Instagram likewise at Dave Sanderson. But I'll be love to offer your audience, if they want to, if they check in with you, I'll send you a link to my first video of my series around certainty, so people can sort of get some messaging around how can you get certain in your life and all when you're in an uncertain situation, and hopefully that'll serve them as my gift to them.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll definitely make good use of that and share that every place one can. And and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today, Dave. What a joy it's been to have you here.
Same here. Thank you very much, Marianne, for having me.
Thank you. We're going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. 'Cause who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
back to Moments with Marianne. Our next guest has inspired millions of people from the stage, on film, and in his best-selling books. He is a member of the Speakers Hall of Fame and is described by Leading Speakers Bureau as one of the world's top 50 business speakers. So David McNally is here today to talk to us about his new book, Mark of an Eagle. So let's welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm delighted to be with you.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. Now, you're such an inspirational person, and I was so impressed with this book. I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I've written several books. This is the third in the trilogy of what we call the Eagle series. Mm-hmm. And what inspired me to write this particular book was encouragement from my wife. About 6 years ago, Marianne, I, like many people, have experienced the journey of cancer. And as a result of that, I thought to myself, what will I do next? Because I had the great benefit of being cured of the cancer. And my wife said, David, I think you've got another book in you. And so I thought to myself, what would I want to write about in terms of this book? And it occurred to me that the greatest gift that I could write about was for my grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren, and I thought to myself, if they were going to learn something about their grandfather, what did he believe in? What did he value? How did he think one became successful in life? What could I communicate to them? And so the title, The Mark of an Eagle, came from the fact that I realized that each and every one of my grandchildren, like all of us, leave a mark on the world. We leave an imprint. And I wanted to make sure that they had the tools to make the imprint that they wanted to make. And so that was the inspiration behind the book.
And I have to really applaud you for this, because a lot of people, as we get older in life, we look at how we can make an impact and what kind of legacy we're leaving behind. And so you start the book right off with reflection. Going into reflection, and it really gets the reader going as far as looking deep into what it is that they've experienced in life and maybe what they would like to see.
Well, the foundation of my work Marianne, I call it practical inspiration. It's important that we all are inspired, and obviously that means that we are engaged in life. But often we're looking for answers, but our real problem is that we really don't have the right questions to find the answers. So through my career, I've been able to come up with a lot of very critical questions that lead us on the path to what we want to go. And when you look at people who get on later in life and have a lot of regrets, it's because they really haven't thought about their lives. In fact, a friend of mine did a study of senior citizens, and it was one of the common themes that came out of that. They said, if I had my life to live over again, I would have taken more time for reflection. I would have taken more time just to think about my life, to see whether the choices and the decisions that I was making in my life were leading me to where I wanted to go in my life. And far too many people lead their lives directed by what they believe others want of them. And we need to take charge of our lives. And so in the first chapter, that's what I get started with. I just say, okay, let's take a look at what you want for your life, and so that we can get some sense of direction here.
Well, and I know that you are really attached to the power of purpose and helping people discover their own gifts. What if you come across somebody and they say, maybe you're doing a lecture or something like that, and someone says, you know what, I don't feel like it can make an impact in the world around me. I'm just a wait staff at a local eatery, or I'm an actor who's struggling to get parts, or I'm a delivery person and I don't really feel that I'm being fulfilled in life. What kind of advice would you give them, especially if they're not feeling like they're passionate about anything that they're doing?
Well, of course, that is a major challenge, and the most important thing there is that people to accept that that's where they are at that particular point. But the truth is that everyone in their own way has a brilliance, and that's just not a cliche. It's the truth. I remember a senior vice president of human resources at a major Fortune 500 company who we were doing work with at one point, and he made a statement, and he said, I have never met a person who could not do something better than me. But he countered that with this statement. I have never met a person who I could not do something better than he or she. And so when you think about that, no matter how brilliant, how famous anybody is, there is something that each of us can do better than someone else. Now, we may have to spend the time to dig into what our gifts and talents are. And so, we have to spend some time looking at what are my strengths, what are my skills, what are my gifts. We may have to do that. But even you mentioned the term waitress. I'll give you a classic example of a waitress that just in the last few months has made a phenomenal impact on me. Now, she is extremely happy with what she's doing because it's evident in her attitudes. But I, several years ago, used to meet once a week with a bunch of my friends, and we were kind of a male support group, and we helped each other through some very, very tough times, but the group disbanded, and I hadn't gone back to this particular restaurant for many years. But I happened to walk into it to go into a meeting with someone, and the waitress's name was Wanda. And I remembered her name very well. Well, lo and behold, as I walked in the door, she looked at me. She said, "Hello, David. How are you? I haven't seen you for a long time." Aww. And I was so taken aback by it, Marianne. I was so taken aback. I said, "How did you remember me?" She said, "Oh, of course I would remember you. You were one of our best customers." So I sat down there and I had my breakfast, and then I just watched her. And I watched her interacting with all of the people in the restaurant, and she had that same wonderful attitude. She greeted them, she smiled at them, and I thought to myself, I wonder if she realizes the mark she is making on the people that she is interacting with every day. I saw that as very, very powerful.
I think anyone would feel that that's powerful, just with being greeted, and obviously she, is very passionate and enjoys what she's doing. She feels like she's making a contribution here. And that kind of leads me to my next question. In your book, you talk about contribution. So why does contribution matter? Well,
our success in life, I believe, Marianne, is in proportion to the contribution that we make. The universe, if you like, is about contribution. If you look at it from a macro level, how the sun contributes to the earth and how the moon contributes to the earth. So if you look at it at a macro level, but then if you push that down into every facet of our lives, think about relationships. That when we look at the people who are most important in our lives, they are the people who contribute to our lives, the people who give our lives meaning. So they're the people that we say today, of course, have our back. They are the friends that do not judge us. They support us even through times of great difficulty. When you look at a business, in our consulting business, we're working with big businesses every day. Contribution is at the heart of a successful business. Successful businesses are the people who treat and contribute to their customers in more powerful ways all the time. They're always looking for ways to produce better products. They're looking for better ways to serve their customers. It's all about contribution. When I go to a college, for example, and young college students are saying to me, how do I get a good job? One of the things that I say to them is to remember no one wants to give you a job. But there are a lot of companies out there looking for people who will contribute to their success. You cannot get away from contribution. It's a fundamental principle. And if any of your listeners have young teenagers or young college-age people, that's the biggest message that you can give them. How do I find a company where I can truly contribute my gifts and talents doing something that I believe makes a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some of the best advice anyone can get, regardless what age they are. Because you get people who get stuck,
Well, when you get a little bit older, for example, and I don't mind telling everybody how old I am. I'm 70 years of age, so, I've lived a pretty good life. But at the same time, I'm healthy, right? I feel vibrant, and every one of us, no matter what our age, needs a purpose to get up in the morning. We need a reason to get up in the morning. We need to be out there, no matter what our age, contributing. And if you look at the people we all admire, they are the people who contribute to life, whether they're the well-known, the famous people, or they're the people that we connect with every day. We need a reason to get up in the morning. We need a destiny towards which we're still going. I like to say that, one of my heroes today is Tony Bennett, making an album with Lady Gaga when he was 88. I think to myself, now there's my role model for the future. So it's a very, very important principle.
Well, and I definitely applaud his, innovation. Who would think, doing an album with Lady Gaga, but that was actually a very cool one.
A very, very cool one. And so when we get a little bit older, we have a couple of choices. Do we stay vibrant, engaged in life, because that's an attitude, right? Or do we circle the wagon waiting for it to be over? And the unfortunate thing is that I find too many young people who have lost or have never had a sense of purpose and have never had a vision. And that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to provide them with the tools and the focus to be able to do that.
Well, and I really appreciate that you do, because it gives people a starting place to go forward. And the book itself, it isn't just, I don't want our listeners to kind of get confused of what kind of a book it is. It's extremely powerful, and it's not just a book you pick up and read. It's very interactive. There's a lot of work to be done here, and it makes it your personal journey.
It's very much designed that way to make sure that as people are working through the book, one of the things that people have to understand, we all want to leave our mark, but leaving your mark on the world is not a goal to be set. It's actually a result. And it's the result of realizing the enormous potential that exists within each of us, the belief that there is a special purpose for our existence, an awareness that we are responsible for what happens in our world. And that's a big one. And then making a commitment to discovering what our gifts and talents are and then utilizing them to achieve the life we want. So what I've endeavored to do is take people through all of those things to help them understand also about relationships. As you know, we deal with the whole notion of adversity. How do you respond to adversity in a very positive way when it faces you? Like I give the story of my cancer journey, which was tremendous adversity. It's also about an appreciation for the amazing world that we live in. Right? We live in just this fantastic world. So it's about how do I make sure that I don't get wrapped up in a cynical view of the world, which is quite easy to do. And so it's a whole series of internal conversations and being able to and willing to answer a lot of very critical questions to really develop a roadmap for where you want to go and what you want your life to be about.
Well, and then you touched on something that I'd like for you to expand upon, because you did talk about adversity. And I think a lot of times when challenges happen, people can really get stuck in their stuff. What are some of the ways that we can soar above adversity?
Well, when we face a major challenge and extreme adversity, and of course I think, and when you use the word cancer, fear comes up with everybody. But there's three ways that people typically respond. One way, of course, is to deny it, to go into some form of a denial that this is not happening to me. No matter, for example, I've lost my job. I'm getting divorced. This person no longer loves me. I've lost my business. Whatever it might be, we can get into this whole attitude of sticking our heads in the sand and hoping we're going to wake up the next day and it's gone away, right? Well, obviously that's not going to solve anything. The second way we can do it is to get very, very angry and fight it and resist it and point the finger and blame people for what has happened to us. And then we can stay in a very dangerous position, and that's a position I call the victim mentality. I'm a victim. But that's not very productive. That's not going to get us anywhere. The third way to do it is to accept what has happened. It's obviously a very mature approach to it, and we may have to go through anger and resistance first of all, but we get to that acceptance factor, and the fact that this is true, this is what has happened to me, this is my current reality. But once we get to acceptance, we are then able to say, okay, what now do I have to be able to create and come back again? And whenever you look at people who have succeeded in life, in the longer term, not the short term, the quick success story, but over a longer term, every human being has had failures, right? The great Broadway producer Hal Prince said, anyone who hasn't had a failure is an amateur. So we all go through that. But what happens as a result of these failures and the coming back, we are obviously strengthened by that. And there is something that builds up inside of us, this resilience, that allows us to get out there and create an even better life. So adversity is very much a part of being a human being. There's no question about that. So we must learn to accept those challenges, but then build strategies for coming back and moving on.
And I think that's so very well said. In your book, you also discuss community. And I wanted to talk with you about how that plays a part in just ultimate success for somebody.
Well, in terms of a community, we all need a community. And whether that community is our family, whether that community is our place of work, but we need community to be able to support us and recognize us and help us to be able to go in the direction of our dreams. One of the things that, for example, in the work that we do with companies, we talk about the fact that when you look at what motivates people to work, for example, well, obviously the first motivator is the fact that we need a paycheck. Money. We live in a world where money pays the bills, it pays the mortgage, it feeds our families, it provides for retirement, whatever it is. Money is a pretty necessary commodity in life. Now, some people aspire to more than others, and that's just fine. But no matter who we are, we need money. So we're motivated to show up for money. However, we're not truly motivated in a powerful way to contribute with more value. The next level of motivation is about community. So in the work we do for organizations, we say, what sort of a community are you creating? Do people look forward to coming to work? When they come into the environment of the workplace, is it a pleasing environment? Does it express the fact that we care for you? And when people interact with each other, is there a level of respect that people have for each other? Again, do people have each other's back? Do they support each other? And so community is very, very important in just having a full and happy life and being motivated.
Well, and I appreciate you touching on that. I know, company culture, when we talk about corporations and company, it's so important to have such a great company culture set up that supports all people, not just millennials or baby boomers or Gen X, just everyone that's there, support their needs. And it was interesting in your book, you also talked about this experiment, which I found very fascinating, about replacing hate with dislike and seeing how that would soften the energy around whatever that thing was, that particular person, place, thing, whatever it was, and have it totally shift the energy completely so people were able to get to a place where it wasn't such a strong, rebellious energy.
Yes, that is a very important tool that I provide for people, and it's something that I've learned myself over the years. It's in the chapter I call Consciously Creating Amazement. Mm-hmm. And consciously creating means that you purposely are creating it, that you want to come to the world, appreciating the amazing things that are out there. So, how do we do that? And the first tool that is provided, of course, is the tool of taking charge of your thoughts. Everything is a result of thought. Whether we're creating a life, creating a career, whether we are feeling depressed, whether we are feeling flat or down, it all is connected to our feelings, our thoughts. And so the practice that I've had for well over 30 years is to spend every morning taking charge of my thoughts so that I can direct them, because I'm a human being. I can get caught up in worry and looking to the future like anybody else. So I take charge of my thoughts to be able to channel people and channel myself in the direction that I want to go. The second tool is to take charge of your language, right? To take charge of your language. And taking charge of your language is to understand, that language is the software of the mind. And so taking charge of our language is to remove from our language the words that don't serve us. And one of the words and that's the one you were referring to, Marianne, was just the use of the word hate, the casual use of the word hate. You hear it a lot with kids. I hate this or I hate that. Well, we really don't hate it. We dislike it. Hate is a very, very powerful word, but the challenge of using that language is that it provokes feelings. And what is so important to understand for all of us is that we live life on a feeling level. And we want to feel good most of the time. Now, life is full of challenges, so we're not going to feel good, 365 days of the year. But we should be looking at our lives and saying, but am I feeling good at least 4 days out of 7? Because if I'm feeling good 4 days out of 7, I'm winning the game of life. If I'm not, I really need to think about that. But language contributes to those feelings. So if you don't want to feel hate, start to remove those words from your language. What are the words that don't serve you? I would use another example, and these are fun. I don't want to get too anal about it, Marianne, but, they're just the expression, oh, that's to die for. Well, it's not too much when you think about it that we would really be willing to die for. So yeah. if you say, oh, my God, that carrot cake, is to die for. Well, it's really not. It's to live for. And so if we change our language, of course, we change our lives. And that's the second most powerful tool. Take charge of your language. Use the language that that will reflect the life that you want to live.
Well, and I think that's so important because so often I do hear people say, well, I hate this, or it could be relating to food or, you name it, the sun rising. And to change that, because it is such a powerful word, I think to change that is a powerful exercise for people to engage in because it does make these huge shifts.
Well, it does. And if people are skeptical about it, I tell them, look, I understand if you're skeptical about it. I mean, one of the exercises, about language is simply how people greet each other. You hear people saying, when they're asked, how are you? Well, I'm hanging in. Well, that notion itself, I understand it. There are times in life where we are just hanging in. But sometimes that can become a habit, and it's an expression that I believe says, well, I'm surviving. Well, the book is not about surviving. The book is helping you to thrive. So can you change the thought to, no, I'm really good. No, I'm kind of, I use the word excellent. I'm excellent. People always say, I'm excellent. No, okay, I may not be feeling excellent, right? But I'm endeavoring to create the feeling that I want. And it's not about, as some people say, fake it till you make it. There's nothing about this book that encourages anything like that. But it's about using the language that takes you to the place where you want to go. But it takes practice. It takes practice. So what I suggest is practice it for 30 days because that's how long it takes to develop a new habit. Practice it for 30 days and see what happens. And I guarantee you will feel differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's very few things. I can't even think of the last time I said I hate this or hate that. And that was a practice that I've put in place, and it makes such a huge difference. It's just phenomenal. There's a quote in your book that I really found to be encouraging and providing a lot of hope, and it's the creative force within us expires only when we expire. And I think that really brings a lot of hope to people because sometimes when we get into life and it's not always glamorous and it's not always fun, knowing that we can still be creative and have a adventure, exciting kind of life is, I think it's something to live for.
Yes, and I let me just make sure that people understand what I was meaning there. That we are born, as human beings, Marianne, we are born to create. We are born to create. It's in our DNA that we are born to create. So there's a little distinction there between creative and create. And because if you look at why we're here, the planet, the earth, the world has moved forward because people continue to create. And we are creating every day of our lives. We create through our attitudes. We create through our behaviors. And when we're not creating, when we haven't got something to look forward to, then we're not happy. And so the realization that need to create, to whether that's as you're getting a little bit older, whether that's to go into a whole new field of study, whether that's to take up art, whether that's to get involved in a not-for-profit, whatever it might be, but we need to create. And it's very fundamental to understanding our purpose as a human being. So you've caught on to that, and as we talked about a little earlier, it doesn't go away. It's always there.
Well, your book is phenomenal, and I highly suggest everyone go pick up their copy of Mark of an Eagle. And David, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
It's been my pleasure, and I just want to say to everyone listening, you have a mark to make. Just go out there and understanding how important you are and how your contribution is so critical.
I love that. Oh, and before we go, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
If they go to davidmcnally.com, it will actually lead them to a website, my website, Transform Corporation, but you just go to that. So go to that and you'll be able to, link in with us and understand who we are. Love to hear from anybody, and if they have any questions, I'd be only too happy to respond.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today, David, and sharing your message with us. It's so inspirational.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and thank you for what you're doing, introducing people like me and others to the world. It's a very important work, Marianne.
It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, Dave. Thank you for being here with us and sharing your wisdom and insights. We've come to the end of our time today. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, and remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.